6 years ago, I moved to Orlando for UCF. I didn't really know anyone, and for those first few semesters, I was actually really lonely. I didn't have a core group of friends around me, people to go out with. So I would go to places where I saw people who I wanted to be around, right? Social events. And I was trying to plug in, I was trying to get closer to the people who I wanted to be friends with. But when I would go to these places, I actually ended up feeling lonely because I didn't know anyone in these environments. Eventually, I was able to make friends, but my experience isn't unique. The modern world is lonely. The Guardian calls the modern age the age of loneliness, and researchers are now treating loneliness as a public health epidemic. It's actually a greater risk of death than smoking. But I believe that we can form deep, enriching bonds. I believe that we can solve loneliness. I believe that we can form rich, in-person social networks that bring new sources of love and light into our life. I believe that community is the answer to loneliness. And community is a funny word. What do you think of when I say community? It's hard to find in the modern world, isn't it? Maybe your yoga studio, your church, the local coffee shop. They're places that we go to repeatedly around people who we want to be around. And for the past 25 months, myself and a close group of friends have been building a microcosm of what the world can be. We've been producing monthly, intentional dance parties called Body Talk with a lot of sweat and a lot of heart, and we've shown over 5,000 people the beautiful time of a great night out. And we're not your typical dance party. We create events that feel right at the time, whether it be a multi-venue production at the Milk District with 300 people, or an intimate day trip to Wekiva Island. And over time, the friendships that people have formed at these parties have deepened into what many call a community. Dance parties are our vehicle for creating a positive, energized community of people committed to principles. And we believe that a good party is one where you make a new friend. That's why we have the intention of creating social places that have the three ingredients for friendships. And those are shared experiences, shared interests, and repeated, unplanned interactions. Dance parties are ideal for all three. And I'm using all this high language, right? I'm talking about parties, but I know what you're picturing, right? Probably a lot of drinking, maybe drugs, maybe questionable decisions. But ultimately, those kinds of parties are fun, but ultimately they're not a healthy life practice. What a party really is a celebratory social gathering. I want us to think of parties as a time when we forget about the troubles of the world and we just come together to celebrate and to be around people who we like. Under that definition, Pachakasha is a party. Nerd Night is a party. And so, I want to tell you about 5 principles that I've learned with my team throwing these intentional parties. If you think about these, they'll help you create events that can help people connect on an authentic level. The first principle is to use space to bring people closer. We've all seen a dance floor like this, right? It's a little bit awkward. Everyone has their social bubble around them, and it's a little hard to approach someone on that kind of dance floor. But the most important principle is fit the space to the number of people who are going. Great job, Eddie, by the way. The second principle is to have a talking place. Really loud music is great because we want to be immersed when we're dancing. But we've only worked with venues that have a quiet place where people can connect on an authentic level. The third principle is to have multiple activities. The typical nightclub, maybe there's a line for the bathroom, a line for drinks, and a somewhat engaging dance floor. At Body Talk, we've had face painters, Cards Against Humanity, Foursquare, all these ways for people to be creative with one another. The fourth principle is to know your identity. When I'm going to an event, diversity is great, but also, are the people gonna be like me? Do we have similar interests? We're going out to be social and meet people. So if you know your identity, then you're able to hit that niche audience so that people go and can be around people who are like them. And the fifth principle is to make it monthly. A great party is one where I have friends who are there. And weekly, maybe that's a lot. Quarterly, maybe that's not enough. But monthly, it can become a tradition among your friend circle where you don't need to invite people. You just know that when you go, you're gonna know people who are there. So those are the 5 principles for a community-driven party or event. I want you to think about them the next time that you go out to an event. Think about space. Think about a talking place, activities, the identity. What's the frequency? And if you organize events, I want you to think about why people are going out and consider that. Now, it's been really rewarding to throw these parties. I've heard countless stories of, people who moved to Orlando and within 2 or 3 months that they've been able to grow a social group around them, a social infrastructure of love and friendship and light. People with social anxiety have told me that these parties are important and they're helping them. As for me, I have a lot of love in my life. I'm 6 years into living in Orlando and 2 years into throwing these parties. And we're trying to get the formula right so that we can start a movement to create community-driven parties across the world. Thank you.